Now, these are the latest visuals coming on your screens of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who has already landed in Xinjiang. You can see a cultural performance by the local youth here in China. A massive welcome for the Prime Minister Narendra Modi here in Xinjiang, China. The government officials from the team of Xi Jinping there at the airport to receive him. First visuals of Prime Minister in China coming on NDTV, where you can see a very warm welcome, Prime Minister being greeted, and now it has been escorted and is on his way to the hotel where again a traditional Indian welcome awaits the Prime Minister in a few minutes from now.
Right, so the Prime Minister has already landed in China, in Tianjin, and these are the live visuals that you can see on your screens. And the Prime Minister, he will be meeting, in fact, he is going to be a part of that SCO summit, but Prime Minister Modi is also scheduled to have a one-on-one with President Xi Jinping, which comes amid the tariff tensions and at the back of thaw in ties since Galwan. And this is something that Aditya Rajkol has also been mentioning. Aditya, when we speak about India's place in the SCO, how can India leverage this platform to push its counter-terrorism agenda, especially with Pakistan at the table? Because this is something that has been a talk of the town. China, in a way, supporting Pakistan. Last time the defense minister was there, he refused to sign that docket. So this is going to be a reset, of course, but this is also going to be looked at very closely.
Well, that's right. India has a lot of top priority points here at the SCO summit, top of them being counterterrorism, but also trade and free connectivity across the SCO region. This is really a platform to reach out to the central, Asian countries as well, who are participating. Apart from that, there are observing nations like Afghanistan and Mongolia. This is the century in many ways of the global south as well, where India's leadership of the global south over the last 5 years has been taken note of. The pandemic, where India came to the rescue of more than 100 countries, cannot be forgotten very easily. And at the same time, there was the former Australian Prime Minister, Tony Abbott, who said that 21st century is the Asian century. But it's not just the Asian century, it's the Indian century as well. So clearly, India will play a very significant and pivotal role of strategic autonomy, but also of cooperation, of also trust being created among these countries of the SCO. And apart from global south being led by India, and of course, free trade and connectivity being spoken about, we will see much more economic cooperation between the SCO nations, and that will be India's top priority as well. This comes significantly at a time when Trump has imposed tariffs against India, and India is pushing trade with several other countries and wants free trade to happen instead of a complete chaos all across that has transitioned over the last few months because of the Trump tariff. So Prime Minister finally landing here in Tianjin, China. And of course, we will be getting latest visuals from Prime Minister's visit at the hotel, where the Indian diaspora is looking forward to welcome.
And very important from the point of view.
In fact, let's also listen in to what is happening down there. And this is right after Prime Minister landed in Tianjin. Let's listen in. Well, this visit by the Prime Minister, it is high stakes, but it is also carefully calibrated. For India, the SCO summit is less about wholehearted embrace, but more about engaging where necessary, pushing its own agenda, that is counter-terrorism, connectivity concerns, and keeping the diplomatic options open. In fact, Aditya, how should we interpret any possible meeting? There is going to be a meeting, but how should we interpret this meeting between the Prime Minister and Xi Jinping?
Well, firstly, first visuals coming on the screens. First on NDTV in India, Prime Minister Narendra Modi landing in Tianjin in China, being greeted by the Chinese ambassador to India and the Indian ambassador to China, Pradeep Kumar Rawat, and of course the defense attaches as per formality. There are also representatives of the People's Government of China to welcome the Prime Minister. You asked me about the big bilateral that will happen tomorrow between Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi. A lot is being said about, a new era of friendship between India and China. But I'm not that positive about the India-China bonhomie. I would sense that it will take still time to reach that level pre-Galwan or 7 years ago. How China had spoken about the Chennai Connect and the Wuhan spirit. But since then, a lot of water has flown down the river. We've seen the unfortunate incident in Galwan, where 20 of our brave hearts lost their life. We had many casualties on the Chinese PLA side that were never admitted. But at the same time, the reality remains that in the recent conflict with Pakistan during Operation Sindoor, China came to the aid of Pakistani army. China came to the aid of a nation that has been supporting terrorism. So it's not going to be hunky-dory. It's not going to be just black and white. India will certainly ask very significant questions on why the terrorists of Lashkar-e-Toiba were carrying Chinese equipment and Chinese weaponry. And apart from that, India would want the SCO to condemn terrorism without mincing any words. That's the top priority for India, that when it comes to counterterrorism, there cannot be any kind of a compromise. There cannot be good terror and bad terror. Terrorism is terrorism, and that needs to be condemned by one and all. India has been a victim of terrorism for a very long time, and SCO's creation in many ways was to counter terrorism, was security cooperation in many ways, and a new era of Asia's legacy really being reinvented at the SCO. And India's push certainly would be that not just counterterrorism and security ties, but when it comes to trade, when it comes to connectivity, when it comes to cultural ties as well, India and the SCO nations can play a very, very significant role.
When we speak about the geopolitical balancing and the optics behind it, how is the West, Aditya, looking at this particular visit? How is the West likely to view Modi's presence in China alongside Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin?
Well, I'm pretty sure that the White House would be keeping a very, very close watch on what happens, not just at the SCO, but particularly the two meetings that Prime Minister Modi has, one with Xi Jinping and then with Putin. Prime Minister from the very beginning has said that this is not an era of war and solutions cannot be found in the battlefield. Prime Minister Modi, in fact, the one global leader who had very frank and positive conversations both in Moscow with Putin and in Kyiv with President Zelensky. So India has from the very beginning said that we want diplomacy and dialogue to happen. In fact, in 2023, at the G20 in Bharat Mandapam as well, Prime Minister making it amply clear that there needs to be a consensus, and a consensus was achieved on the Russia-Ukraine war. Apart from that, yes, on the tariffs front, on the economic cooperation front, we've had not so good times for India in the recent weeks with the constant bullying and theatrics and rhetoric that's coming in from the White House particularly, but also from the larger governance structure of the United States. Regular statements almost every passing day over the last 15 to 20 days from the US on tariff issue, trying to isolate India on the issue of buying Russian oil and doing trade with Russia. But then India, both Prime Minister Modi and Jaishankar have been trying to show the mirror to the Americans that the reality remains that Americans themselves and the European Union, their close partners, have been doing trade with Russia, even through the Russia-Ukraine war. So why raise questions on India? Why put sanctions on India? It's the hypocrisy of the West. It's the duplicity of the West that really is exposed. But the larger question right now is this a time for cooperation and peace, or is this a time to put sanctions? Clearly, the global strategic partnership that India has with the US has been respected by New Delhi. But at the same time, Americans have changed their goalposts time and again, that instead of focusing on the global strategic partnership, they are imposing sanctions. And sanctions and strategic partnerships certainly cannot go on the same page. So India keeping its cards very close to its chest right now, but at a time when it has good relations with US, overall speaking, over the last many decades. It continues to have good relations with China and Russia as well. It's a multipolar world. India believes in multilateralism, and that is what will be the focus here at SCO, that all the countries need to come together. There needs to be renewed cooperation. There needs to be renewed strength being given to Asia as well, and particularly the global South, which India is very significantly and positively leading.